these have been officers that have been kicking down doors, tackling drug use, 100% applied to be police officers, literally sold everything he had to keep the lights on there. It's know that for a fact. He raised a lot of money. Yeah, thanks for having me, Connor. My name's Chris Webb. I'm the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner for Lancashire. I've been in post now over 2 years. With the role, the primary job is public engagement, working with stakeholders, and basically being the people's voice within the police force here in Lancashire.
Yeah. So, as a DPCC, do you find yourself doing that kind of job on a daily basis? Is it something that is a daily job, or is it something that you kind of do on the side when you get given tasks?
So my job at the minute, I'm employed 3 days a week by the Commissioner, but there's many deputies, and the majority of deputies up and down the country are employed full time. So what my role is I'm given portfolios by the Commissioner to go out and work on. So my normal commitments are to engage with the public on the public precept, to set in the council tax budget, is to liaise with MPs, councillors and other stakeholders when lobbying the government or asking local authorities for extra support, also liaising between them and the local police forces and communities set across Lancashire. Again, also for me, I oversee the Youth Commission that we've started up, and I oversee Our Lancashire, which is a social action network that the Commissioner set up using proceeds of crime so that everyone across Lancashire has a link, and it's about bringing community organisations together.
Yeah, I bet that can be quite rewarding at times, doing that kind of job, you know, going out and talking with the public and doing different work like that. I bet it can be quite rewarding.
Definitely, I've really enjoyed the role. I think I've finally found a role that I enjoy and I'm good at. I think engaging with the public is something that I've done throughout my working life. Majority of my working life has been in the public sector. You know, I've been working for the DLA, right up to being a civil servant, and now, you know, in my role as DPCC. So for me, engaging with the public, it's good. You get honest feedback from the public, good or bad, and they tell you how it is, which is exactly what you need. And unfortunately, some of the circles that we do travel in politics, you don't always get a straight answer, but you do from the public, and that's what I really like. And as well, it's great to work alongside Lancashire Police. They're one of the best forces in the country. They've just been graded with the leadership of the Commissioner outstanding for efficiencies and use of resources. It puts them up there in the top 3 in the country. And what we see day in, day out is Lancashire Police being viewed as one of the best. That's why we have loads of officers trying to come into the force from other forces, and that's why we have longevity with our staff and officers within the organisation. So it's definitely proud to promote the work that they do, also act as the public's voice within that. So as the Commissioner always says, we're here to be a critical friend to the police force. He's elected to hold them to account, set the budget and set the police and crime plan, and then it's the Chief Constable's job to set out that vision within his organisation and do the operational. But it's immensely rewarding seeing the work that they do, how we can help communities, especially we've seen real successes in this last year with the Our Lancashire Social Action Network that I lead. We've been able to help people, whether they've been victims of crime or before they've fallen victims of crime. And for us, that's real action and work, and that's reinvesting, you know, proceeds of crime and the actions of criminals back into the community to make some good and to help communities rebuild, especially as we know through the pandemic and through austerity that communities have really suffered and lost connections. Well, actually, we're now seeing them come back together.
Yeah. Do you think that, you know, the kind of current climate has changed the way policing has happened? Because, you know, we know that the Lancashire Police Force they've been an incredible police force for years and years and years and years. And in my personal opinion, I think they're getting better as time and technology moves on. But do you think the pandemic has changed anything or changed the way that they've worked?
Well, there's definitely been a change in circumstances. You've now got police out and about in communities on a Friday and Saturday night when actually the threat, harm and risk priority was those hotspots, Blackpool and Preston town centres, etc. So the nature of it has changed, but I think they've adapted really, really well. We were going through changes anyway. We were upgrading our call centre. So they moved out to 3 different areas across the county in the different BCUs. And they've adapted under this crisis. And we are seeing the public engaging with the new police. The Commissioner introduced new task forces a year ago, using resources and efficiencies and some money from the precept last year. And these have been officers that have been kicking down doors, tackling drug use, locking up criminals. They've seized over £10 million worth of drugs, for example. That shows they've been working and they've been out and about in every neighbourhood. And what the Commissioner wants to do is to expand that. And again, through the use of efficiencies and savings and being a proactive force and managing the budget in the best way possible, not only are we going to see an increase in officers, we're going to see more. And that's down to the Commissioner and his balancing of the budget, not government's investment. Because unfortunately, what we would also see is, yes, we're going to get these new bobbies from Boris, but for one, they're ring fenced. And if we just took them and didn't increase the precept, we would lose a huge amount of police staff. And that's how we've been able to become efficient, because we've employed police staff, not warrant officers, to be in the call centres and other places to help the public and to be doing efficient service. So we need that. And the other issue is the fact that we're still going to be hundreds of officers down from where we were in 2010, but leafy areas in the south, like Surrey, are already above their levels they were in 2010. So there hasn't been a fair redistribution back to police forces. What the Commissioner, what I and many others have been fighting for, is to say, put the officers back where they went, where we lost those large numbers over those 10 years of austerity. They haven't done that. And you're seeing leafy rich areas getting more officers than they had in 2010, and areas like Lancashire still being one of the worst in the country and still not back at the levels they were in 2010. So again, that's where we have to try and work as best we can. We're increasing the officer numbers through the work of efficiencies and savings and being proactive with the budget, but the government still aren't giving us what we should have and what would be fair. And that's why, you know, one of the whole ethos of Commissioner and I is just to be asking for a fair deal from government. We're not asking above and beyond, just fairness. And unfortunately, we're not getting that at the minute.
Yeah, you kind of just touched on what fairness would look like, but in an ideal situation, if you managed to get what you wanted, what would it look like, and how would it have an impact?
Well, during austerity, policing has had to change to threat, harm and risk, which has meant neighbourhood police forces across the county have been limited in what they can do, because they have to respond to the major incidents. You know, when you lose 750 officers in an area like Lancashire, it has a huge impact on the service they can deliver. Not only that, the nature of policing is changing, and more of their job is welfare rather than tackling crime, because there's been cuts in other services, which means the police are the last line of defence and it gets pushed onto them. So they've really had to adapt. But what we're saying is, if we can get the officers back, we can start rebuilding neighbourhood policing, which is a top pledge of the Commissioner. And what that is, it's about getting the resources back, getting a fair grant budget, getting it so that the taxpayer doesn't pay for policing. It should come from a grant block from the government. Unfortunately, for us to balance the budget, to balance the books, and to try and get extra investment, we have to raise the precept. And it will be, you know, it would be wrong if we didn't, because the public cry out day in, day out for more policing, and they back an increase in the precept. And in Lancashire, that will be an extra £10 a year for the majority of residents, because most people in Lancashire live in Band A or B. So it'll be about a £10 or a £12 increase a year. So it's not much money, but I get money's tight and we understand that. But we have a duty of care to the residents of Lancashire, and they tell us overwhelmingly they're willing to pay more. So the plan is to put them back into the force, and it's to expand neighbourhood policing, to expand rural policing. There'll be a launch soon of a new task force of that. So it's about expanding what we've got now and policing getting back out in the communities, because we know with that intelligence on the ground, that can feed to tackling large crime like modern slavery, county lines, drug use, and other criminal activity, and even terrorism. So that neighbourhood policing and intel from the ground up is essential to having the best force we can and to tackle crime across Lancashire.
Yeah, definitely. And so before this, I asked a couple of my friends, I messaged a couple of them and I said, do you know what a police commissioner is, or do you know what a police crime commissioner is, or deputy police crime? And they were all of 16, 17-year-olds. And one or two had an idea, mainly because they could put the words together. But what is a deputy police crime commissioner? How do you become one? How do you become a police crime commissioner?
So for me, becoming deputy, it was an advertised job. So it's a staff job within the commissioner's office. So for me, I applied, I went through a vigorous interview process, which was done by the commissioner's office and independent people on the panel. Then once the commissioner made his decision and he decided I was his preferred candidate, I then had to go to the police and crime panel in Lancashire. So that's made up of councillors right across Lancashire County Council area, Blackburn and Darwen Council area, and Blackpool. And then I was quizzed and challenged by each one of those members on that panel about my durability and am I right for this role? And it was a cross-party role from all different political persuasions. The criteria, I had the experience, and I got through. For the Police and Crime Commissioner, they are directly elected by the people of Lancashire. So every 4 years, it's been 5 years because of the COVID pandemic, but every 4 years they're elected by the public to then represent them in policing. In the past, the police were held to account by, again, a panel of councillors, but there was no overall figure to lead that. The Conservative government introduced police and crime commissioners in 2012 to be that level between the public and policing, to hold them to account and to make sure that the public have a view of scrutinising through that. So again, police and crime commissioners are there, they're elected by the people, they're there to set the budget of the local police force, to set the police and crime plan, which then the Chief Constable will implement. And they also have the powers to fire and hire the Commissioner. And recently we've seen our current Chief Constable, hired the Chief Constable, and the current Chief Constable's retiring. And we've just hired a new Chief Constable that will start in April. So that's the sort of level that they have. And also some police and crime commissioner roles have merged across the country with mayor positions, like Andy Burnham's, for example. So that's how. So my role as deputies, and there are, I think, over half now of PCCs, if not more, have deputies because the role has expanded. And there is a PCC review coming out soon, which I highly anticipate the role will expand even more. So deputies are there, they're linked to the term of the commissioner, and then the commissioner is elected.
Yeah. So in terms of your job, you will stay on with the crime with the commissioner, or will you carry on after with a new commissioner?
No, so deputies are linked to the term of the current commissioner. If Clive was to lose the election, my contract finishes on the 5th of May. So then it could be possible they may offer me a position. Highly doubting, because it is a political role, I would finish. If the current Commissioner Clive Gunshaw is re-elected, then it would be his choice whether or not to extend my contract and keep me in as deputy or not, whether he wants that role. So that will be determined at the election. Yeah.
So before you mentioned that you oversee Lancashire Youth Crime Commission. So that's a newly set up group that kind of look at the crime reductions and prevention, more strategies, and a youth voice on crime. Why did you do that? Why was that group kind of created?
Well, we felt that young people didn't have a strong enough voice within kind of policing, and I think that goes up and down the country. I don't think that's just here in Lancashire. And the Commissioner's always been keen to have the voices of all sectors of our community feed into the policing crime plan and help him with his role at holding the police to account. So what we wanted to do was bring together young people from right across Lancashire to have a look at how the Commissioner can implement his policing crime plan, feed into that, and also support his role in holding the force to account in what they do day to day. So I think in their policies and helping feed that in. So I think that's a really good thing. I think, there's always groups that are kind of underrepresented, and young people tend to fall within that, especially below voting age of 18. I think that goes through any kind of political structure up and down the country. So we were keen that we wanted to make sure young people had a voice with the Commissioner. So that's why we set it up. And, engaging with young people has been a passion of mine. It's something I've done for many, many years. And so it was a good fit for me to take the lead on it. And so far it's been absolutely fantastic. I've got a meeting in a couple of hours after this with a few young people, and I think they've been really engaging, coming up with ideas and feeding intel into us that then we can add to our policing crime plan.
Yeah. So recently I had another kind of policing expert on this podcast called Peter Blexley. And Peter spoke about different strategies that he thinks would be effective. And obviously, everybody has opinions. Some people may disagree with him or agree with him. One thing he said that could prevent crimes in sort of an overview factor is having police officers on a regular beat, how they used to be many years ago. Now, we just said that there is kind of a low police level. There isn't loads of police for Lancashire maybe to be able to do that. But do you think that is something that could be done in the future and would be effective?
100%, and that's why one of the Commissioner's main pledges is to rebuild neighbourhood policing, is to put bobbies back on the beat in Lancashire and not in leafy areas like Surrey. So definitely that sort of intel, that visibility helps reduce crime. We know that for a fact. And unfortunately, after losing 750 officers, you can't do that visibility like you once did. But once we're putting back in and we're being efficient with the resources we've got, and we're changing roles, and with roles that become police staff and then warrant officers and more out on the beat, out in the communities, that's key. And that's where we want to put that investment. And that's why we're saying, give us our fair share of officers back in Lancashire so we can put them out on the streets, on the beat, in the neighbourhoods, where they can help tackle crime and help the community. 100%, that's what we need to go back to, because it's a formula that works. We know it does. And unfortunately, with the reduction in officers, crime increases. That's even been acknowledged by Home Secretaries now. So we need more. And I think Boris, as the Prime Minister, gets that with his pledge of 20,000. Not all of them will be neighbourhood police officers. Some will go into, counter-terrorism and things like that. They won't actually be going back into neighbourhood, forces community-wise, but we will get a fair chunk and we'll get a certain way. But again, it's also about managing the resources in a proper and efficient way that you can then move up, use that money to hire more officers. And that's one thing that the Commissioner in Lancashire has been really, really good at over the years. And it's why we've been rated outstanding for efficiencies by the government inspector, because we've been able to do that. And again, working alongside the Chief Constable and the senior team in the force, I think we've done some real good stuff here, and they deserve a lot of the praise. And it's really going to, people are seeing a difference already with the task force. It's only going to get more, it's only going to get better, and they're going to see more and more officers. out and about. And it's about, as well, giving them the kit to stay out in the neighbourhoods. So giving them the body cams, giving them the Samsung mobile, so they can do the work and link with the police force and their station out on patrol, so they have to keep coming back. So again, it's giving them the right tools. And one of the big things that we did was invest in new drones, which meant that we can respond quicker. Officers have got, you know, the resources to tackle big events. So we've not had any of them with COVID, but in the times they were, and they can, you know, when it comes down to missing children or people, they can deploy them very, very quickly, a lot more, you know, a lot quicker than we could with the helicopter. And we can get out there and we can tackle crime. So that's just one example of where investment's gone. And it saved us money, but it's also been more efficient.
So the money currently for the officers isn't there, and that's why we don't have these officers. But are there people there ready, willing to become officers, and who are able to be brilliant officers?
Yeah, no doubt. We know from seeing the amount of people that apply to be police officers, you know, we're always oversubscribed. There is definitely an appetite, and many of them want to become officers in their areas. Unfortunately, you know, budget restraint, we can only hire so many at a time, but we are looking at new avenues. I think, you know, we've released some stuff for officers to come through the apprenticeship and degree scheme that got launched the other day, I saw online. So there is definitely the appetite, there is definitely the demand for more officers across Lancashire, but unfortunately we need the resources, the backing of government properly to actually fill those slots and get back to where we were in 2010, and I hope beyond, so we can serve the public, you know, best possible service as possible.
And another thing that Peter said was about drugs. Now I'm from Blackpool, and I know you're also from Blackpool, and Blackpool in everything kind of seems to have high numbers, and one of the high numbers is in drug misuse and alcohol misuse, and one thing that Peter said, Peter knows Blackpool and has seen the kind of rise in drug misuse and kind of, to use his words, dodgy dealings and things like that. He said if there was a possibility to legalise these drugs and have them at a Boots or a, you know, some sort of super drug store or pharmacist or whatever, and people go and buy these drugs in amounts and then go and take it away and do what with it as they please, then it would reduce the numbers of these dodgy dealings, but it would also make it a safer place. So the people using drugs long term could go down, because, you know, you have to go out and actually go to a place to get them rather than getting your friend to come and drop them off. Do you think that is something that would ever work or would ever be possible?
I think some countries like Portugal and that have tried this, and some have had some successes, some haven't. I think here in the UK, there isn't an appetite from the public to decriminalise drugs. Now, the merits of that and the successes you could have with legalisation, I think there's debates on both sides. But what's clear to me from when I speak with the public is that isn't what they want. What they want to see is not just harsher sentences, but chances for people to get rehabilitation and to get the support they need to come off the drugs. Now, I engage with a lot of the homeless community in Blackpool, out and about and outreach, and a lot of that is drug and alcohol misuse. And just, you can't solve the homeless problem by just putting them in a hotel room or, you know, into a flat, because the issue that got them to be homeless in the first place hasn't been addressed, hence the drug and alcohol. So I think we need more services to support those who have an addiction. I think we've had some amazing organisations in the town in Blackpool and across Lancashire. So But again, they are under-resourced. A lot of them are lottery funding, and it's very short amount of time that they can operate and be successful. So for me, it's more about engaging with those that fall foul of addiction, and then go through the criminal justice system. When it's making sure when they're in there that they get the help and the support they need, rather than just coming out and starting that cycle all over again. As I say, I think there's pros and cons on both sides in this. I know both sides are pretty strong, but from what I get from the public, there isn't an appetite for decriminalisation, but there is an appetite for more support and backing of those that go through the system to make sure they come out the other end, drug and alcohol free, and that they can rebuild their lives. I think more support that way is the kind of first step and the biggest step that I think the public want, rather than decriminalisation. Now, we've seen in America with cannabis and others, it seems to be becoming more common elsewhere. And, there's a lot of people across the country in the UK that go to Amsterdam and other places, Portugal, etc. But I think as the UK, as England, I think the appetite in the public is no to decriminalisation, but to more support for those that fall victim of it.
Yeah, and I think rehabilitation in not just a drug sense, in a general sense, there's lots of crimes, unfortunately, in Blackpool. Blackpool does have high numbers in suicide, in homelessness, in lots of things. So some sort of counselling and rehabilitation service would be good. And do you think that there would be a service that kind of collaborates with the police force and works hand in hand?
Yeah, so the Commission already supports a number of organisations that are out and about doing this work, and oversees the kind of commissioning of the victim services, which again help those victims of crime, drug and alcohol misuses because of crime. So there's already work out there, but again, a lot of these charities and third sector organisations have limited funding. Local councils can't provide the services because they've been stripped back for austerity for 10 years, and they've now been hit with COVID and aren't getting the resources in to even cover COVID, never mind booking it extra. And again, just using Blackpool as the example, the budget I think they're putting forward in a couple of weeks for the council is 80% of it is for social services, 20% for everything else. That's huge, but they have to do that because they've got to meet the statutory obligations, but there isn't enough then to look at the wider picture. And that's why it's been, councils like Blackpool and others have been reliant on grant funding or single pot funding from the government. Whereas what I've been arguing for, and many have, to say, look, stop giving us 1 or 2 years or small pots of money. We needed sustainable, a long-term plan for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And as you've highlighted, Blackpool, when it comes to all the metrics, is at the wrong side of the scales. It's got 8 out of the 10 most deprived neighbourhoods in the country. I think it's the worst for, men reaching a certain age and dying. We've got, I think it's the lowest age of life expectancy for men, and not so much better for women. You've got huge deprivation. You've got the food bank, for example, in December, doing nearly 70,000 meals. There is problems here. But again, it can't be solved by single pot funding from the government. It needs to be long sustainable funding. And I think from a commissioner's perspective, he's tried to use the proceeds of crime and help those that are doing this work in the community through his reducing reoffending fund, through his community action fund, through his knife crime fund, and through his street angels and pastor fund, to help those that are doing the work now in small ways that can help. But actually there needs to be, for areas like this with high crime and homelessness, deprivation, needs to be a long-term plan of 5, 10, 15 years, and that long-term commitment from government that's enshrined in legislation to help them, because it can't just be short bits and pots of money all the time, which unfortunately we've seen recently. And I say there was a pot of money given to an organisation in Blackpool that helped with drug and alcohol, and that's just finished, and there wasn't any money to support it going forward. And we saw it with children's centres in Blackpool closing because the pot of money from the government ended. because it wasn't a long-term plan, and that has a knock-on effect. And then when people are in deprivation, they turn to crime to live and to get by, and unfortunately then turn to substance misuse to get through the kind of tough times they have, which then leads to mental health illnesses and issues. And again, we know right across the country there's a mental health crisis, but Blackpool's been suffering for a long time, and I know a lot of people have told me some horrific stories, and unfortunately we're seeing quite frequently, or more than we'd like, more and more suicides in the town and more attacks. And again, that was down to not having the mental health resources we need to serve the people. And again, a lot of the issues that police now have to deal with are mental health and welfare issues, because there isn't any other service to do it. And so it's finding ways to adapt and work with communities to get them the resources they need to have that long-term durability to solve these issues we have in many of the deprived communities across Lancashire.
Mm-hmm. So if anybody has you on social media, they will have seen that recently you have been doing a lot of charity work. I think it's unfair if I don't bring it up and say and kind of commend you on that, because it's quite admirable that you do so much charity work and the amount that you do. People may or may not have seen you do food deliveries. You get up early in the morning and you drive a van, food parcels, and you've run marathons before, and you tend to do a lot of good charity work for Blackpool mainly, but also other organisations nationally. Is this something that you've always kind of done and will continue to do?
Yeah, I grew up in a public sector household, so both my mum and dad worked in the public sector, and it was always about giving something back. My dad set up a children's charity with a couple of 26 years ago, which was set up to deliver aid to orphanages in Eastern Europe following in the wars in Bosnia and issues in Bulgaria and other places. So I've always seen that kind of work from my parents and the fundraising. And this was, once a year, my dad would go off for 3.5 weeks and drive across Eastern Europe. We'd wait by the phone in the evening for the call to hear the stories of what had gone on. And then we'd see the pictures. And it's not like now where you can do, FaceTime wherever. Back then you had to wait, and it was wait by the phone or wait to hear from him when he was out in Bulgaria, Bosnia. It was literally, they drive from England all the way over there and back. So I'd always seen that, growing up, about giving back. And for me, it's not always just about doing my job, going home, put my feet up, watching telly, blah, blah. For me, I've always given back. So whether that was before, with fundraising, starting at university. So at university, we did the first ever in a long time cross-codes rugby match where Rugby League faced Rugby Union. That was for charity. The only way we could get it agreed by the student union, because they thought it'd just be a massive ruckus. I was president of Rugby League at the time, and alongside the captain of Rugby Union, we got it together and we raised a lot of money. And I've kind of done lots of that since 5K, 10K, half marathons and the marathon, and I'm signed up to do the London Marathon again in October. I'm not built for marathon running. I'm 6'2". I like my pizza. It's tough, but I also like to challenge myself as well, and like to say, right, have that focus, get out and do something. And if me, putting myself through hell to get round a London Marathon or a half marathon or whatever can raise thousands of pounds for people, then great, and good causes. And if I can give up 3 weeks to travel over to orphanages in Moldova or to Syrian refugees in Hungary and stuff, then to me, it's giving something back. I was privileged, I grew up in a brilliant household with mum and dad who worked the socks off, didn't have much money, but we had a loving family that gave us everything. And a lot of families were, a lot of people a lot worse off. And I was lucky. I was the first to go to university, first my family to go to university. I got some fantastic work experience during university. They got me a job afterwards. I've always worked. I had 3 jobs at 14. I've always worked. but I've always wanted to give something back. And I've always been proud of my hometown, and wherever I went, I would always talk about Blackpool. I'd always big it up. I would fight for national conference to come back here within the Labour Party and other organisations. I've been successful with some trade unions, but and I've been trying to make the case to the Labour Party with the new conference centre. I've always tried to talk up the town, and yes, I did leave for a few years because of work, and I had a job out in Manchester, but I've been back now quite a number of years, and for me, I've seen how the town's gone really down and how people are suffering. So I gave small bits of time to different organisations I wanted to help with, the variety of homeless organisations, Blackpool Food Bank. But for me, it really hit home in October with the free school meals, like when they were refusing to give free school meals, and when my local MP voted against free school meals bill in Parliament. You know, I thought, I can't just go on social media and have a moan and attack and do the usual things. I went, no, you've got to put your money where your mouth is, Chris. You've got to do something about it. That's why I did the fundraiser that, you know, remarkably, to the generosity of the people of Blackpool, raised over £14,000 and ensured no child went hungry. And it was then that I spoke with Neil and Helen and the team at the food bank to say, I need to do more. I can't just do a couple of food collections. I can't just drop some donations off. I need to do more. There is people that are suffering. I can give more. So got in touch. We've been talking about a project that I'd lead on, which we'll look at after the lockdown's over. But I said in the meantime, I want to roll my sleeves up. I can drive vans, give me some deliveries to do, and every week I've been doing that now, helping out. And again, another thing that I'm quite passionate about is mental health. I've seen it throughout my life with friends and that, and I know in Blackpool it's a huge issue. So there's this great organisation called Council in the Community, led by an amazing guy, Stuart, who literally sold everything he had to keep the lights on there. It's a donation-based service that is helping hundreds and hundreds of people a month. And, you know, I was delighted they asked me to become a treasurer and to help support them. Not treasurer, sorry, trustee. And again, alongside that, and being a trustee for the children's charity, CWHA, that Dad set up, and getting more hands-on involved there, I've been able to say, look, these are the skills, this is the time that I've got. I want to give something back, because I think community is the thing that's kept us all together under austerity and through the impact we've all gone through with COVID. And, you know, I'm fortunate I can give some time. So that's what I wanted to do. But also, again, with the upcoming marathon, again, is challenging myself and giving myself a focus under lockdown, because we've all struggled at times. We've all, it's coming up to a year where we've all had to work from home, or we've not had the interactions with friends and family. My nephew was born a few weeks ago. I've not been able to see him because of lockdown. And, we are struggling, and you miss your friend. I miss, me and my mates would go out once every month. We go out for a drink, and we go out around Polton or Blackpool or wherever. Or then birthdays, we'd go off somewhere else. And we've got a great group of lads. There's about 12, 15 of us, but we've not been able to do that. And we've had to adapt to Zoom or Call of Duty. And each one of us have struggled throughout, COVID in our own ways and trying to be supportive. But we miss it, we miss normal life, we miss going out, I miss going to the footy, and, going to the cinema. For me, the cinema was a great place for me, because I could go in, turn my phone off, relax from work, and just zone out. And it did wonders for me. And again, me and my wife were going out and about, and going out to eat, restaurants and stuff like that. You have to adapt. But by, again, starting the marathon training at the beginning of the year, I got my place confirmed last week. It's given me a focus. I'm getting healthier, dropped 2 stone in weight. I've ran over 150 kilometres so far at the beginning of the year. And it just gives me that. And it gets, we're all guilty of it. Just after work, logging off, I'll leave my loft and go down, put Netflix on and just sit down all day. But actually, I want to start being a bit more active, and also being active in the community. I'm hoping to do more as time goes on, and use the tools and the expertise I've got to try and help within the community, especially the homelessness community. And I've been out on outreaches a number of times. I was out twice last week, and we've got something else going on this Saturday as well, which I'll be joined by the Commissioner. So we're really, really trying to make a difference, not just in Blackpool, but right across Lancashire, because I think communities need it right now. And even when restrictions are lifted, we're going to have the repercussions of this pandemic for a long time to come. So it's not just going to be all sorted once everyone's got the vaccine. We know there's going to be huge issues, and we've got to, work in our communities and help us recover and help each other.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of as a final point, what can us as the public, the people, my viewers are like my age, about 15 to 17, 18. So what can we do as young people to kind of support the police force, or push the government to do, or even coming back to our kind of final points of charity work, what can we do to help Lancashire?
For me, what I'd say is shout and make your voices heard. Young people are great with social media. I know it's a bit of a stereotype, but you know how it works. You know how to make your voice heard. Lobby your politicians, lobby your elected officials, your MPs, your councillors, your police commissioners, your mayors. At the end of the day, they have to listen. You are their constituents. Make your voices heard, make your views heard, even if it's just sending an email to your local councillor, MP, to your police commissioner. One thing about it is all these public officials have their information on the internet readily available. You can get it to make that lobby. Use social media to make your voices heard. Set up petitions on issues you're passionate online. If you want to help organisations, you can do food collections that you can drop off at food banks. You can get involved in community projects, and you can come together to make a difference. Just because you're under 18 or you're not registered to vote, and it doesn't mean you can't influence the political agenda in your area. And we've seen movements over the last year really make change. The Black Lives Movement's one that has changed the world. It's gone from an incident that happened in America that's gone right across, and we saw protests and we saw the communities coming together to say, this is wrong, we want it sorted, and we want change. And young people can make change when they come together and they work on an issue. So I'd say get involved, make your voices heard, speak to your youth member of parliaments, but don't be shy at contacting electoral officials to make your voice heard, because they will listen. Well, the good ones will anyway, but they will listen and they will engage, because they want to know a variety of thoughts. And that's why the Commissioner set up the Youth Commission in the first place, is to hear those views, to hear what's going on in the ground, in the communities. But use the platforms you've got and just shout from the rooftops and you will be heard. And again, if your member of parliament isn't listening or your council isn't listening, go to the local press, go to your local newspaper, your TV, your radio, because they'll want to hear your views. They're there to represent all of you. So just use any mechanism you can, and you will be able to implement change. And again, even if it's a fundraiser, a fun run, a sponsorship, any sort of thing, every little bit helps. And I joined and saw a young lad recently who ran 30 miles in memory of his uncle, who sadly passed away, and he wanted to raise it for a mental health charity. And this is a young lad, and he just wanted to raise some money, and he's raised nearly £3,000 by doing quite a lot of runs. He put 30k around Stanley Park and around his area, and it's remarkable. But it just shows, if a young lad can do it, anyone can do it. So, and just use any tools you can. And again, don't be afraid to ask for advice from people that are in senior positions, like myself, the Commissioner and others. We'll engage, we'll offer that advice. People helped us, people gave me advice in various roles that I have gone in and wanted to go into. I had great work experience, had people that helped me. And for me, that's part of why giving back. It's why, I used to, when we could organise trips from my old high school to go down to London to meet MPs and Parliament and to engage at party conferences and to, you know, to give something. People gave me the opportunity, and it's about giving back as well. So you can definitely make a change. Just make your voices will be heard, and just make sure they are heard.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And me personally, I use my platform of social media and now more of coming on to doing a small podcast where, you know, I get some people that want to listen to it, and I talk about all sorts. And I'm now moving into a time where I'm not just going to have guests on. I've done about 12 or 13 with guests, and I thought, well, I want to do some with my friends who I know are opinionated, and we'll talk about mental health or deprivation or domestic abuse or racism and things like that, which I think is really important. And I know a lot of other young people do also. And that's something that I also push, is the fact that we do have a voice, and it is important for us to use it.
Definitely, and debate's healthy. Like I've done a number of debates now at like the sixth form college and old high school and stuff like that, and that's healthy. And there's people that have had different opinions to me, and you know, my last debate at the sixth form college was quite a heated one, but that's the society we live. We live in a democratic society where you can have healthy debates on issues and talk about what your beliefs are. And then that's part of making society better, because that's where good ideas come from. It's where compromise and compassion can come from. But that's how we can make change. So the more of it, and, you know, more people like yourself engaging. I know you've done Q&As with members of Parliament and you've raised concerns direct to them. The more of that, and again, it's about opening up politics. To me, and it's something I've said a number of times, is I think Westminster and politics, especially in the UK, is stuck in archaic times. You know, the fact that I can apply for a mortgage or a loan on my phone, but I can't vote on my phone. You know, democracy hasn't, you know, updated itself in a sense. You know, and America does lead the way with some of it, with electronic voting, which only happens within London. We need to expand that, electronic counting, sorry, but also early voting, easier accessibility to a postal vote. Those are the things we need to do. And to me, it seems very archaic that if we want to vote, normally we have to go to a certain place at a certain time, put our cross on a box, rather than being able to vote through your phone or vote in other means, because, you know, we should be doing that. And again, to me, voting on a Thursday when people are working, it should be a weekend. I think they have that in France. You know, things like that we need to encourage more. And again, a key thing for me is votes at 16. That's crucial. If you can pay income, you know, national insurance, sorry, if you can join the army, if you can start a family at 16, you can vote. You should have that voice. So again, it's about opening up our democracy. And we saw improvements under COVID where MPs could vote remotely and electronically if they couldn't make it down to London, and then it got scrapped. And it's like, it's one step forward, two steps back. And I think we need to modernise that. We need to open it up more, and we need to, you know, politics and people in senior positions need to be accessible more. And again, that's one of the reasons why, for me, I've tried to do as many of these Q&As. I did one with one of the colleges with their public service class and others. And it's, you've got to make yourself accessible. And there's no excuse now. People could either, I can't make that date, or it's over the other side of the country, or what. We've all got used to Zoom now. We've got to having conversations exactly like this. There is no excuse why you can't do that now. And I think, and that's where the public need to hold them up to a high standard. And again, when I've stood in elections before, I've used Facebook Live, I've used that to communicate, and I've used social media as a platform. And when people send me a message on Facebook, I reply personally. It's never been a staffer. It's never been pre-scripted. I reply to every message. I think that's crucial. Someone takes the time to engage with you, you've got to engage back. Might not agree with them, and there's times I haven't, and we've had arguments, but you reply, curious, and you answer their concerns. And I think that's crucial.
Yeah, definitely. And I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. It's been very insightful to get a different side of different views, and also a kind of a professional opinion on on the police crime and the commissioner's work and everything, and I have really enjoyed it. So thank you for coming along today.
No, thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed it, and best of luck with the podcast. I've been following you so far, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. So I'll pause.